Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. I'm your host, Hannah MacDonald, and I'll be bookending the conversation with some of the most exciting voices from the bookish world. Welcome to another episode in our debut Spotlight series, where we shine a light on the freshest authors and their work. Today, that spotlight is on Elaine Hastings and her debut novel, When We Were Young, which is out now and published by Avon Books. Elaine is a writer based in Surrey. She studied art and graphic design at the University of the Arts London and now works as the creative lead in a communications agency, working on fiction in her spare time. Her debut, When We Were Young, is a beautiful and touching novel about the mistakes we make as a young person and the consequences we must face. It's about love and loss and the power of music, and it is perfect for fans of David Nicholls, Taylor Jenkins-Reid and Holly Brickley. Here to chat all about it, welcome Elaine to A Pair of Bookends.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. Elaine is zooming in from holiday, so I am very jealous right now. That must mean that you have been reading books on holiday, no?
Do you know I haven't? I haven't even properly started to read yet. I don't know. I get comfortable on the lounger and it's like, come in the water, come do this. Or like I'm having to do something on my phone, like, write an article for something.
Fair. So you're
At the
busy.
moment, a bit of
Busy.
promotional
Did you
writing.
take an aspirational book stack with you?
I've got my Kindle, which has obviously got the world's books on it,
Great.
never knowing which one to start next. So I don't know what I'm going to do. That's probably why I'm putting off starting to read, but I've hardly read a word since I've been here.
Oh no. But what are you reading at the moment? That is my favorite question. So yeah,
Well,
what have you
yeah,
been
that
reading
is a good
recently?
one. And I am just about to start something, but I have what I wanted to tell you about is one that I've just finished, which is Mary Jane by Jessica Anya Blau. Have you read that
No,
one?
I've not come across this. No.
So yeah, I'm all these kind of music books are coming on my radar now. So this one is based in Baltimore in the 1970s, and the premise is great because it's about a musician who comes to this small town to dry out, to have, in those days, I guess they didn't have rehab. So he's going to this doctor's house just to dry out for the summer. And it's told from the point of view of the teenage girl that's been brought in to nanny for his daughter. So she's kind of witnessing this rock star and his film star wife coming to this small town, this kind of progressive lifestyle where she comes from a really straight-laced, good church-going family. And she's sort of thrown into this bohemian lifestyle. And it's so summery and lovely. And I've just loved it.
That sounds like so much fun. That is a perfect read for the summer. So
Yeah.
yeah, a great recommendation. I want to ask you before we get into your book about your journey as a debut author. You studied art and graphic design. So I'm really curious at what point writing came into the picture. Is that something that you've always done on the side, or is it something that you've become passionate about in recent years? Yeah, how has that kind of mapped out for you?
Yeah. Well, I guess when I was at school, I liked writing. And when I was young, just a child, I'd be drawing and writing stories and making stuff up in my head. But I think then once you get to the age where you think, well, I should try to write a novel or something. And then people, you read things and it says, oh, you need to write what you know. You haven't got any life experience, so you can't write anything. And it's just something that's always been there in the back of my mind, thinking I'd love to do it, love reading. I'd like to try, and just never had the confidence to try it.
Yeah.
And then big birthday, I thought, right, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So I started trying to learn what the process was to get a novel down, and that took an awfully long time. And then once you've started, it takes an awfully long time to finish.
Yeah.
And then an awfully long time to get anyone to read it, and it's just been a really long process to get to this stage.
But it's amazing that you've done it, because a lot of people do say that they want to write a book and then they never end up finishing it for one reason or another. And no judgment on my part, life is hard and hectic, but I think it's such an amazing achievement to have actually done it and seen it through, especially when you are already doing a full-time job and you've got kids and, anything else that might come up. It might mean you've got a busy life. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So it's congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been hard work, but
Yeah.
worth it now, worth it now.
How are you feeling about releasing it into the world?
It's so strange. It's such a really weird feeling like it's happening to somebody else. 'Cause you're kind of following all these other people's journeys and thinking, oh, wish that was me. And now it's happening. It does feel like a really kind of weird, strange, like it's not real kind of
Yeah,
thing.
that makes sense.
But, I really do have to keep having, that pinch me moment where I keep thinking, come on, you've got to really enjoy this because this is what you've been working hard for.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard though, isn't it? I think as a creative, it's hard to separate those two things and to just relax into it and to just be able to enjoy it when there's so many things that you need to be thinking about. Of course, there's the rush of now having to promote the book that you've spent so long writing and having to do all the promotional stuff. And I think when you're so busy, it's so hard to just stop and think like, wow, yeah, I've actually, done this, I've achieved this. I can just
Yeah.
enjoy it because you're busy thinking about everything else.
Yeah, it
Um,
does feel like there isn't time to sit and enjoy it. But, my husband keeps saying to me, even today, I'm a bit nervous coming in here. This is my first podcast. So
oh
he's
my
like,
gosh.
enjoy it, enjoy it. Yeah, here I am trying to enjoy it.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm so grateful that you've come on the podcast and it's your first one. What an
Yeah.
honor. That's amazing. But yeah, you really do need to enjoy it. But I also struggle with that. I've said on the podcast before that I'm an actor and I've been writing for a long time as well. And I'm currently working on my debut. We'll see what happens with that.
Oh, best of
But
luck.
we'll see. But yeah, it's I think it is a really hard thing to just be able to enjoy something. I'm working on a play at the moment and I'm having the usual creative
Yeah. Is this
scaries.
rubbish?
It's
Is this any good? All that kind of
yeah,
stuff. Yeah.
yeah. It's really hard. And I think as an actor, it's like, oh my God, like you're every time you're getting on stage and you're being really vulnerable and it feels like you're stepping on stage completely naked and it's horrifying. You're like, why do I do this to myself? And then you
Yeah.
come off stage and you're like, oh, that's why.
That's
Like
right. Yes, exactly.
the
So a
feeling
play and a
afterwards.
novel you're working on.
I'm not writing the play. I'm just in the play. But yeah,
Okay.
I'm working on a novel. So yeah, it's
Best
it's
of
scary,
luck.
but fingers
But
crossed.
that's it. You've got to put yourself out there if you're creative, haven't
You
you? Otherwise,
do.
what's the point? It's
Yeah,
all in your head.
exactly. Absolutely. Let's get into when we were young.
Yeah.
Could you tell the listeners what we when we were young is all about?
I can. I think I can try to do that. So it's a dual timeline set in the 1990s and 2016. And the 90s storyline follows an aspiring musician called Will and a talented art student called Emily. And their paths cross at the tube station where he busks. So it kind of follows them as they're falling in love and chasing their dreams and, traveling around the world and this whirlwind of his career taking off. And then that, with no spoilers, kind of ends in tragedy. So you
Yes.
need to kind of read to find out why. But I don't think that's a spoiler. I think that's on the back of the book.
Yeah.
And then cutting forward to 2016, we see Emily as she is in the present-ish day. And she's, the art is long forgotten. She's a single mum at this kind of pivotal time in her life where her daughter wants her independence and, she's trying to hold on to that,
Mm.
little girl. And then, it's kind of that her daughter finds out about her past and her connection to this iconic
Yeah.
music icon. And it's a story about love in
Yeah.
all its different forms, like romantic love, family love, and it's all kind of wrapped around this central mystery, which is what happened to Will Bailey.
You've navigated that so well without any spoilers. It's always so hard when there's,
Yeah.
a big spoiler that like anything could give it away. It's really hard to not unravel that. But it's an amazing book. I absolutely loved this book.
Yeah.
And I read it in a couple of days and I just was so obsessed with this story and finding out what happened to these characters. And yeah, I was just completely wrapped up in this story. And you have made it quite clear, so this isn't a spoiler to say so, but it is a love story, but it's one that, as you've said, we know is doomed from the start. What
Sorry
appealed to
about
you?
that.
I love it. I'm all for that. What appealed to you about writing that type of love story.
Oh, I love those kind of stories. Like I love all that pain and agony and angst and yearning and longing and all that kind of stuff. They're the stories that I love, If it's all happily ever after and fluffy, then it's not really for me. And I think it's not that I feel like everyone should be reading about doom and gloom, because there are happy moments and, I think it's an ultimately uplifting story.
It
But
is.
I like people to characters to go through some stuff before they can be happy. They've got to
Yeah.
learn something about themselves and each other, and they're the kind of stories I love. So that's why, and they're the ones that stay with me. Those kind of stories are the ones that I always remember and want to reread and go back to. So I think that's why I thought I would like to try.
Me too, me too. And I do love reading a love story, but I sometimes struggle when it's a romance where everything's fluffy and neat. And that's the kind of love story that I'm not as interested in. I want
Yeah.
to read about the drama and the angst and the yearning and all that kind of stuff. Do you have any favourites of any other kind of in that kind of ilk that you've read before?
Yeah, like I could tell you one that's really old because you probably won't have read it, but it's called The Smoke Jumper.
I haven't
And
read
that's
this.
one that I reread and reread all the time because I love it. But it's about two young guys, they're best friends, and somewhere in America where they have wildfires, they kind of turn up at the fire season, and their friendship kind of starts there. It ends up being this really epic love story where these two best friends are kind of in a love triangle with a girl, and it's lots of terrible things happen to them, and it's really angsty and lots of longing, and it's one that I reread all the time. So it's from the same author as the Horse Whisperer, so that we're talking really old. I
Oh,
just love it. I really, really,
that
really,
sounds great. I'll have
yeah,
to add that to my TBR because
yeah,
I
and
haven't
lots
heard
of
of that before.
creativity as well. He's a photographer. One of them's a photographer, and one of them's he writes musicals. So I love all that.
Yeah, me too. I'm gonna have to look this up afterwards. It's always a risk coming on and chatting to authors and getting book recommendations because I end up coming
Yeah.
away and I'm like, great, there's another few that I need to add to my pile. Books all around the house now. It's
Oh, I bet.
becoming a like safety hazard, but we'll we'll deal with that when the
Yeah.
time comes.
Yeah.
You mentioned before that this is obviously a dual timeline, and I
Hmm.
really want to ask you about that because, as you said, the novel moves back and forth between the mid to late 90s and 2016, when in 2016, Emily is an adult with a teenager of her own, and the story is told from the perspectives of Emily and her daughter. But why did you want to zone in on their perspectives specifically and set the novel out in this way?
It sounds really complicated, doesn't it? It sounds like you've got, multiple POVs, two timelines. And why did I do that to myself? Look, I don't know, but it felt like the only way to tell this story, because you need to kind of know stuff from the mother's perspective, and you need to know around those same things that happen, what the daughter's perspective is on it, and also you need to kind of keep dipping back in time. I felt like the only way to tell it, and it was easy enough writing it. That first draft of going backwards and forwards and in between these two present day timelines seemed easy enough, but when it came to editing it and being given editorial notes, it was a nightmare. So I would not recommend it because everything is linked, and then once you take out one piece or put another piece in, then it all changes, and you've just made a whole load more work for yourself. So it's been really hard work.
I can imagine, but
Yeah.
it's so brilliantly done, and I think it's so easy to follow. So whilst it might have been a difficult process for you, it's not difficult as a reader not to
Yeah,
rub
I
it
think people are
in.
saying that. That's what I'm hearing, and I'm really glad to hear that it's not confusing.
Not
It
at all.
follows and flows. I think, and that was hard work to get it to work, but yeah, I felt that was the only way you could tell it.
I'm sorry that you had to struggle through that, but I'm glad because I got to read it. So thank you for putting yourself through that. I want to ask you about grief and loss, which are the big themes in the book. And Emily has been haunted by grief for many years to the point that a specific song kind of catapults her back to that time. And it also makes her crash a car. So there's that. What was important to you when tackling the topic of grief? Like, is there a way that you wanted? Did you want to portray it in a particular way? Was there kind of a pressure to get grief right, whatever that means?
No, maybe I should have felt pressure to get it right, but I didn't really. I just really wanted to explore that idea that we have about tortured rock stars. I just wondered what might happen to this particular character if I was to take that situation and try to explore what happens and
Yeah.
how the people around them could be affected by it at the end. Because I think just as someone who consumes music, like when you hear about a musician's death, it really affects you the way you listen to the music afterwards and how you interpret the lyrics afterwards. We feel like there are all these clues in there that might tell us something about it. And that just really fascinated me. And I felt like I'd just like to imagine what it would be like to be in that musician's head, in the heads of the people around them, and just sort of see how that would feel. So, yeah, I didn't really think too much about grief. And yeah, I didn't get too bogged down with that. Maybe it's something I probably should have got a bit more, but I didn't. I just wanted to see how I think I would feel in some of those
Yes.
situations.
Yeah, no, and I think you did a beautiful job of it. So even if you weren't actively thinking about grief, I think when you're navigating this kind of story, it's naturally going to come up. And I think putting yourself in their shoes is a really beautiful way to do it because, you're really finding ways to connect with those characters and it brings sort of truth and authenticity to their kind of journey. If you're thinking about how would I respond to the situation, I think that's a really beautiful way to write. I do want to ask you about Will's career because it's a really fascinating journey that he goes on. He's really kind of not struggling, but it's sort of like playing music in his parents' garage. He's making music with his friends, and there's a lot of he's busking and he's sort of muddling his way through. But then when he does find fame, it all happens very quickly. What were you envisioning as the type of music that he would be playing?
That's a great question. I'm like a huge Buckley fan. So I was when I thought of this character at first, I was thinking, oh, he'd be like the British Jeff Buckley. That's what I was thinking in my mind. But I know writers say this, but as I got to know my character, he did sort of take on his own personality and really maybe he looks a bit like him in my mind, but apart from that, he's not Jeff Buckley. But I imagine he's probably got a brilliant voice like Jeff Buckley, but he's probably not as clever as Jeff Buckley when it comes to writing music. He's, musically, I mean, I think he can write lyrics and and has a beautiful voice. I think that's what everybody says about him that kind of meets him and hears his music. But he's not as big or as good as Jeff Buckley.
But you wrote Will's lyrics as well.
Oh,
What
yes.
was that like? Because they're scattered throughout the book, and we get bits and pieces of his music. But songwriting is a whole other kind of writing process to novel writing. So yeah, what was that like for you?
Really hard. Because I'm not a musician and I'm not a poet, and I only put little snippets here and there because I felt that was all I was confident enough to do. Did the bare minimum that I felt that I could in that situation because you're trying to make out that this person's pretty almost musical genius and I am not. So I can't really write lyrics as well as I'd like to, but yeah, that was quite daunting actually. But I remember Kings of Leon, the lead singer there, Caleb Followill. I remember seeing an interview with him once where he was saying that he's really, really underconfident about writing lyrics. So I think when you know that about someone, I think he feels pressure on himself because he's not a poet, but he's trying to be a poet, and that kind of strain on him, it comes out when you listen to his lyrics. There's lots of he keeps it simple and there's lots of sort of yeahs and ohs and things like that, like to fill where there would be words. So I think that's quite an interesting way to sort of think about it. Maybe as a songwriter, I would be like Caleb, like really underconfident and just hope that the singing covers up the lack of intelligent lyrics.
No, I thought your
Um,
lyrics were great.
oh, did you? Oh, thank you very
Yeah,
much.
I really enjoyed reading them. And I think it's so interesting to hear about a musician's process. And just with you saying, giving us that sort of taster then, I'm really curious about your research process into the music world, because there's a moment where Emily is trying to help Will write music. He's struggling and she's trying to help him write music. And I think it's David Bowie that they talk about,
Yeah.
who cuts out bits of like words from newspapers and stuff, and then tries to select random words and put them together and see what might inspire something. So yeah, do you want to tell us about that and about any sort of cool things you found out in your research?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's stuff that I've just been gathering over the years. You know how you just certain things like that stay with you. So I
Yeah.
do remember watching that documentary that Emily says she watched, where yeah, David Bowie cuts up, bits of newspaper. It might be books or just your own handwritten words, and jumbling them up and selecting them just can spark different ideas. It's better than looking at a blank piece of paper, isn't it? So yeah, that's one process. Thinking about it, I should have tried that for my lyrics writing. I didn't do that at the time. Yeah, and I think, what else did I research? I mean, so in the 90s, I was an art student, and my boyfriend at the time was a musician. So I didn't have to, that kind of side of it was all just from life. So I
Yeah.
remember what it was like to be in the back of a van, squashed up against an amp, holding a guitar case and trying to keep everything steady, and going to gigs all over London, and knowing what it's like to be an unsigned artist,
Yeah.
and then having to research what it's like to actually get signed. Just reading lots of musicians' biographies. I read Alex James from Blur, his biography, and Skin from Skunk Anansie, hers, and I'm just trying to think, and a lot of them I wouldn't want to say I read, because I dipped into them and just flicked through to the bits where it was relevant for
Yeah.
me. And just over the years, all the things that I've kind of learned about music and songwriting, and all the documentaries that I've ever watched, Dave Grohl's brilliant Sonic Highways. So that's just going around all the brilliant recording studios around America. So just seeing what life's like for a musician kind of fascinates me anyway. So it wasn't necessarily that I had to do research for the book, but maybe, I guess, what I was interested in anyway.
No, but you've picked up bits and pieces from all these
Along the
different
way.
places, and I think it all really helps. And it felt so real and authentic to me, because we see this entire journey that he goes on from being an unsigned artist and sort of struggling through, and he's busking and he's really trying to make it, and then his career just kind of spirals and it explodes in a way. He does this one gig and then it sort of catapults him. And I thought what was really interesting though is, whilst we see all the excitement of this journey, we see a darker side to fame, and we see how Willie's kind of taken advantage of by various people that he's working with, and he becomes sick from exhaustion, and his mental health is impacted. And I don't think this is, giving away any kind of spoilers about this book, because I think with young musicians, it's a tale as old as time that they're
Yeah.
not taken care of. Why did you want to highlight the sort of darker side of being a musician and that sort of industry?
I think because the reason why I was drawn to writing something was because I was thinking about those kind of musicians. It just seems like every year someone's dying, aren't they? It feels like we're losing musicians so sort of regularly. It's weird. And just thinking about the kind of lifestyle that they lead, they never get any rest when they're on tour.
Yeah.
They don't see daylight. They don't eat properly when you're on the road. You don't exercise. All those things that keep us mentally and physically healthy, they just don't have time to do. And then there's all the pressure of fame. I think that's what interested me about writing a story like this. So I guess that's why the darker side of it has kind of crept in there. Because again, I don't want to read a story about something that goes brilliantly and nothing goes wrong. So, these are the things that happen, don't they, to musicians and all kinds of artists, really. Just that pressure to keep creating and having other people rely on you, especially, in a band where I've deliberately kind of did it so that they weren't a band with a band name. It's more like a solo artist with a loyal band. So the pressure's on him for their livelihood, really, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's so difficult, isn't it? Because they're not really perceived as people, and it must be really difficult for the people around them that love them and care about them, that aren't in that world, not his friends in the band, but people outside of that to watch them go through that and be like, oh, this is what they've always wanted, but this isn't, how, like, that that's not how they'd envisioned it.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to watch that unfold because it's just kind of accepted, isn't it? That it's sort of the price we pay for fame. And
Yeah,
it's not
absolutely.
right. It shouldn't be like that, but it
No.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, and and I think they feel like they can't complain. This is what I always wanted. I've just got to work hard and keep going. I've got to keep going. Everyone's relying on me. And it must be, I mean, I hope that it's not so bad now, but I'm pretty sure it was definitely what happened in the 90s. And
Yeah.
I like to think that artists are getting a bit more help these days than they did back then.
I'd hope so. Yeah, I'd really hope so. I should have asked you about this before when we were talking about the dual timeline, but I am going to move back to Emily's relationship with her daughter,
Yes.
because it's a really important relationship in the book, of course. And Liv as Emily's daughter, sorry, seems to just completely misunderstand her mum, and I don't think it's a purposeful thing. I think it's just a teenager thing where you naturally feel like the whole world is against you and you think that your mum is out to get you. But I think she can be quite harsh on her
Oh,
mum.
yeah.
But I am not innocent. I was probably like this as a teenager, so I will just flag that now. But I think Emily can be overprotective
Oh,
as a
yeah.
result of, the things that she's experienced in her past. It's probably, made her have a guard up a bit more. And there's a lovely moment that I want to touch on where Liv sees an old photo of her mum and she's totally thrown by it because she doesn't recognise her mum in this photo because it's not the really sensible person that she's kind of the person she thinks her mum is.
Completely
She's
different.
you forget that I think you forget that your parents are actually fully fleshed human beings, and she forgets that, and she sees this photo and she's like, oh well, this is something new. What did that moment, but also, yeah, what did that represent to you about mothers and daughters, and what drew you into really exploring this dynamic?
Wow. Yeah, that is an important moment. And
Yeah.
I think you're right. We do that with our parents, don't we? We don't realize that they had lives before us, right? What did they do before? That's my mum, that's who she is. And I think even Emily thinks, well, that's all in the past now. All I am now is Liv's mum. That's what my purpose is now. And yeah, that I think that's it really. It was just feeding into that idea of how you would cope with life after what happens that we can't talk about too much,
Yeah.
and just not being able to move on, or like the only way that you can keep going is to keep that stuff sort of buried. And I think that is, it's a kind of dramatic, overblown way that the relationships that we have with our parents, in that, yeah, we don't know what they did before, and we don't care what they did before, right? It's not interesting. We only really care about what they are now for us as our parents. But yeah, that was an important thing because I really did want her to just have this relationship with her daughter that would be really special, and to kind of break free of that punishment that she's putting on herself. She's not going to be able to do that by herself, so she's going to need people to make her realize that she's not just Liv's mum, even if it's just the question of Liv being too old to be mothered like that anymore now. There's a time where she just needs to realize that she has a purpose that's outside motherhood,
Yeah.
because otherwise she's just going to be lonely forever.
Yeah.
So I thought it was an important time for them both, really, to have the story happen there and then, and hopefully that makes sense and works with the story.
No, it absolutely does. I am such a fan of reading about mother-daughter dynamics. It's one of my favourite family dynamics to read about. I think there's so much to explore within that. It's such an interesting one.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
It is, it's really fascinating. I
Yeah.
don't know what it is about it, but it just seems that, there's such an intensity to it. And I feel the same about sister dynamics as well, but I don't know if that's because it's just I'm thinking about my own family dynamics and that
Yeah.
I have three sisters and
Oh my
I
gosh.
know. So it's
Lots of hormones in that house.
oh, tell me about it. But I think, yeah, it's just you look for the things that resonate with you, don't you? And I think,
Yeah.
yeah, mother-daughter dynamics are just something that really appealed to me in novels, and I think you wrote about them really well. There is a moment as well that I kind of referenced earlier that I want to ask you about when Emily hears a song and has a visceral reaction. And you write, with the first few notes, I recognize the song and it's like a punch to the solar plexus. I can't breathe. And this is more asking about you rather than the moment itself. But when I read this, I was like, I really want to ask you about it. Are there any songs that have had this kind of lasting impact on you?
Oh, that's a brilliant question. Well, none that would make me crash a car.
No, I think that's I don't
And
think
for
that's a normal
Emily, I think
reaction.
that, yeah, for that, because by the time we get to 2016, Emily is, the 90s are a long way away, and Will isn't like a household name. The career has been going for 20 years. It finished then. So she would not have heard it since then. And
Yeah.
that's why that moment has so much of an impact. So I don't have any equivalent of that, but I don't know. Like, I mean, music is so amazing at getting you in certain moods, isn't it? And
Yeah.
and you hear something that you haven't heard for a long time, and it's one that you love, that kind of reaction, like, oh yeah, oh,
Yes.
I love all that. But I can't think of one singular one that would make me do that. Probably mainly because I still listen to a lot of music from the 90s all the time. So I feel
Yeah.
like there's not even one that will take me back because I've kind of overused them. They've
Fair.
been going with me my whole life. So there isn't really one that would take
I
me back.
don't I don't even think though that I think this is a sort of special circumstance where, it makes her crash a car and it has a sort of negative impact on her. I think for a lot of people, music does have a lasting positive impact. And,
Yeah.
like you were saying, you hear a song and you go to a party and you've not requested that song, but you hear a song that comes on and you're immediately up on the dance floor.
Yeah, yeah.
And it could be that you heard that song, you used to dance around your room as a child to that song, or
Yeah.
you danced with your friends at university to that song, and
Yeah.
it's just I just think it's
Instant,
so
isn't
beautiful
it?
how
It's
music
instant.
connects to memories. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really beautiful thing. I mean, I was just mentioning, my mum and my sisters, whenever whenever Flying Without Wings by Westlife comes on, we we have to sing. None of us can sing. Like none of us can sing, but we used to sing. My mum was a single mum bringing us up, and whenever she'd like have picked us all up from school or whatever, we'd all be in the car belting out "Flying Without Wings," and it was
Oh.
genuinely tragic. Like you've never heard anything like it in your life. If the windows were down, people would have thought somebody was dying because it was that
Well,
horrible.
isn't
But
that lovely though
we've
that you
all,
have
yeah.
this moment where whichever of your sisters is out and they might hear that, they'll think of you and they'll
Oh,
think of your
you'll
sisters and
get
your
a
mum.
crackly voice note that's sent.
Yeah.
It's
Listen.
horrific.
Listen.
Yeah, and you're like, what the bloody hell's this now? Like, but yeah,
So
we're like the most
you one that you
insufferable
don't hear all the
people.
time, right? Because
Yeah,
they're the ones that, when you do hear, it's like, yes.
yeah, it's just really horrible for anybody that has to be at a family party with us because we will get on the dance floor and we will belt it out together, and everyone just has to sit and be like, so when's this gonna be over? This little performance.
But it feels so good to belt something out
Oh,
like
it
that, even
does.
if it doesn't. That's why I like to sing. I like to put music on in the car because you can keep the windows rolled up and you can just
Yeah,
sing to your heart's content.
yeah.
Hopefully, you don't get stuck in traffic, 'cause then you have to sort of lower the volume a bit. But otherwise,
Look to
yeah,
the
it's so
side and see
good.
people staring at you. I love it so much, and this book really reminded me of how music can connect us so much to our memories and our past. And I think there's something really beautiful in that. Before I let you go, Elaine, I do want to ask what is next for you?
Oh, well, having said that, I don't like writing dual timelines, they're too hard. I'm writing another dual timeline novel. So my second book is set in the 60s and present
Amazing.
day. So it's the fashion industry, kind of the dark side of fame in the fashion industry. So yes, watch this space.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting. I can't wait to
Yeah.
read this. We'll have to have you back, Elaine, if you'll come.
Oh, that would be lovely. Thank you. I had a
Um,
really nice time.
Before I let you go, I do like to finish by asking for a recommendation. So, what would you like to recommend today?
Right. Well, I'm going a bit off-piste in recommending that people support their local music music venues. So
Amazing.
if we only ever go and see things at the O2, then bands aren't gonna get to practice their craft. They're not gonna play, you've got to go and see your small local bands in your local venues at 7 o'clock and cheer them on, be loud, give grassroots venues a chance. There's the Music Venues Trust. So musicvenuetrust.com. You can go on there, find out where your local venues are and support these bands coming through and artists.
And also, what a privilege to be able to see some of these bands in such an intimate setting.
Exactly.
And when they, become famous, you can say, well, I got to have that really special gig and now they're selling out and I got to, really see them and really feel close to
Up
them.
close, yeah,
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 I think it's
yeah.
really beautiful. And I think even if they don't become famous, I think it's just so nice to be in a setting like that. And I feel the same about theatre and that support local theatres because it's the same thing with that.
Yeah,
You support your local venues and it's the same with, in the book industry, support your local bookshops.
yes,
It's all
exactly.
important.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's amazing to support artists when they're at that level and they're still learning their craft, as you say. And
Yeah, because I
um
think it's a real problem at the moment. I think all the smaller venues are closing, and some of the venues that I talk about in the book are no longer around. So it's kind of become a little bit of a crisis. So I think
yeah.
we can get back to that local venues kind of music supporting the young artists. Then
Yeah.
that's what we should do if we can.
Absolutely. I think the music industry has been hit really hard since COVID,
Yeah,
as a lot of industries, but it's really important that, yeah, like you said, we support them. And I'm going to pop a link to the website you mentioned in the show notes,
brilliant. Thank
so
you.
everybody can go and look there. And I will also be popping a link in the show notes to grab yourselves a copy of Elaine's wonderful book, When We Were Young, which is out now. Is it just out in the UK? Am I right in thinking that?
Yes, just the
Yes,
UK at the moment. Yeah.
at the moment. Okay.
No, it is out in other countries, but only in English.
Only in English.
Yeah, so there's not
Okay.
translations of it. That's what you're asking, right? So you can get it in Ireland, you get it in, all other countries, but only in English and not in America yet.
Great. Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Elaine, for coming on the podcast today. It's been such a
Thank you
joy
for having
chatting to
me.
you. Where can the listeners find you online?
Oh, my website is ElaineHastingsAuthor.com, I think, but mostly you'll find me on Instagram, Hastings Writes.
Amazing. And there'll be links to those in the show notes also. And if you enjoyed this episode, listeners, you can rate, review, and subscribe. That would really help us. And if you want to give us a follow, you can do so at A Pair of Bookends Pod on Instagram and at A Pair of Bookends on Twitter and TikTok. Lastly, thank you again, Elaine. I've loved chatting to you today and I loved your
Oh,
book so much. So thank you.
thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
And thank you, listeners, for listening. Goodbye.